Hello, hello, hello. This is take 3 of my devlog for my project codenamed Chevalier. Now, this is a video game project that I'm working on right now. I guess it's a little bit of a personal project for fun, and the concept is to make something of a um, clone, emulation, exploration, homage to games like Dishonored, and upcoming games in the style of that should be Fallen Aces, Gloomwood, maybe what we thought Graven was going to be, that sort of subgenre of immersive sim stealth type games, which I know is a pretty high mark to hit, but I think it's pretty cool. This is a simple title screen that I've made, and so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the player controller and a little bit about some of my influences and a little bit about the vision. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about some things whose vibe has interested me. I love Dishonored. Dishonored, its sequels and DLCs and Prey are some of my favorite video games. And the thing that I really like about Dishonored is these really tiny, detailed environments that you can move through. All of the Dishonored levels are rarely larger than a few city blocks, but within those few city blocks, you're given such leeway to move around in interesting ways, whether it's through rooftops or ducking into alleys, like we're seeing this player do, ducking into houses that are abandoned or houses that might not be abandoned, and filching lots of cool stuff, whatever you can find. This sort of detailed environment and detailed locomotion, I think, is incredibly cool and engaging. I just love that, you know, you're in this tiny square, but by using pipes, by using vents, by using balconies, you can just keep on finding places to go and ways to attack situations. And that is just really fascinating and exciting to me as a gameplay experience. These little ant hole style video game levels. This was uh, I guess we could call it a AAA game, or maybe a AA game. Um, I don't think that it was a very large team. But there are smaller games that are coming out right now, being made by even smaller teams. Fallen Aces, for instance, has the same quality. There's lots of stealth, but also combat, so there's a lot of freedom in how the player can move through the game. And I like that there's just lots of interesting behaviors. For instance, you can do a stealth takeout on this guy, pick up his weapons. Here's a TV. It has a little bit of a unique interactivity. And again, we're inside of this little space, which tells a little bit of a story and gives the player lots of different options. Um, a similar situation, here we're in an atrium, and the player is going to decide to sneak through by using a vent system. Or if he was armed, he could just punch right through and blast dudes. But this kind of freedom in how to approach levels is something that I think is incredibly cool and exciting. Two other influences we're going to take a quick look at. Gloomwood, Thief with Guns, is all about darkness and sneaking, and again, filching things and environments, looking at notes, paying close attention to your enemies and their behaviors, and finding ways to deal with them in a kind of non-linear, not quite a sandbox, but rather an anthill type environment. We're taking a look at this game map, and it is not linear, besides the locked doors, just a semi believable place that the player can kind of navigate and find all sorts of ways to move through and develop a mastery over. A little bit farther afield is Graven, which I love for its kind of toy like visual style, which is similar to Dishonored. There's lots of stuff to look at, but it lacked the immersive interactivity that people expected when they were looking at the early look at the game. Players expected to be able to interact with the world with a little bit more freedom. They expected more solutions to problems than kind of just boomer shooter wildness. And even though it seems like it was a good game, the mismanaged, what should I call them? The mismanaged expectations kind of set people short. So anyways, we're going back into my Unreal project, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the player character for a little bit. Just gameplay, nothing about story. So right now, we're looking at a prototype level. This is just a space where I dump in things that I want to test and delete without much of a care. It's not very serious. So I'm going to go into the game. I'm going to make that screen even bigger for you. Ah, that's nice. And so we are back. So this is a first-person game. Our character can move, jump, fall, run, crawl. While you're running, and if you press the crawl button, you can slide. And while you're sliding, or crawling too, you can go into spaces that will fit you. In fact, there's even some parkour functionality with that where you can slide through and be rather quick. Most of this functionality has come from an Unreal Marketplace asset called First Person Parkour. I'm going to pull it up really quickly. This thing. And when I picked this thing up many years ago, I did not know anything about Unreal, and it is really quite complicated because it features dozens of actor components attached to the player character that add all of this functionality, and each of them has pretty wild and complicated traces, and they all interact with one another. So a lot of what I just showed you has come from that. I have made some changes that are pretty boring, including changing the way that some of the traces behave, or extending some behavior because I noticed that the character wasn't moving through the environments that I liked building very well. But that's that. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple. Because I want to make a stealth immersive sim, lots of the stealth features that I had to add and combat features and interactivity are things that I've had to add myself or splice in from other Unreal kind of projects that people have shared. The first, which you might have noticed, is while your character doesn't have legs, there is a periodic trace that happens which returns the physical material of whatever surface you're walking on, and it changes depending on whether you're crouched or standing. And every time it does this, it is reporting a noise event in a certain radius from the player. When I begin talking about the AI, you'll see that AIs will respond to these noises and come looking for you. Another thing that I've done in order to make a stealth system, I guess insofar as we're talking about sound, is that noises are also reported when the player hits stuff with their sword. Not when you hit nothing, but a similar system where a trace returns the physical material, whether it's rock, wood, or metal, and all of these report noise events to the AI too. Thrown objects also report noise events. Though something I have yet to decide is whether I want to have the interactable objects like crates all be physics simulated and interactable like this, or if I only wanted to have smaller objects like bottles. It's a kind of a decision about scale that I haven't quite reached a conclusion about. In any case, that is sound as it's related to the stealth system. The next thing with the stealth system, here let me readjust really quickly, that you might think is interesting is related to shadow. So I have a system where there's a directional light in the game world, and it's constantly tracing to an area around the player. And when the player is out of sight from the sun or standing in the shadow, you can see a stealth factor on the top right of the screen. It goes to 0. And it goes to 0.6. It's a little bit lower when you're crouching, and it's all the way at 1 when you're running. So, and I will also begin to, when I talk about AI, you will also see that this kind of also has a function with whether the AI can detect you and how they respond to the player. When it is beneath 2 and you are crouching, you're entered into this fully hidden state, which is delineated by this honestly very bad vignette effect, which I've just put in there so that the player can know that something is happening. But this basically means that while you are in real shadows that you can see in the game world, your character is hidden. And when he's in light that you can see in the game world, you're visible. I'm very proud of this. One problem that I don't know quite how I want to handle is that when you're standing in really small shadows, your character is hidden still. I don't know if this counts as being hidden, seeing as you're just standing in like this tiny spot, but I think I'm gonna let it rock. I'm gonna do a quick backing out of the system. I'm going to go to the first person character controller, open up this first person controller and go to the darkness system and edit it. And then I'm quickly going to go through, here's the trace to sun. Okay, so it looks like I was already here. And I'm going to draw this debug type for duration. And if I go back into the game, you can see that it's constantly tracing to where the sun is. And these lights become blocked when the game can't see where we are. So that's how it works. I'm going to quickly turn off this trace, and I'm going to show that there was also a trace between the point lights and the player. And so there are also interior lights. Here is one, and it looks like it is on. So we can see a similar effect, is that when you get to a certain proximity to the light, it begins tracing to the player. But because there's this wall in between us, it can't see us. But once we step out, we are visible, according to the game again. I can close the door, and the stealth factor has gone back to 0. I'm going to show you... I don't have to show you. So these 3 things, or maybe even just 2 things, footsteps, sword slashes, and other item sounds, kind of reporting sounds, and this system where the player can be hidden when they're out of sight, or rather when they're not being hit by a light, I think these constitute a really good foundation for a kind of immersive stealthy experience like I'm trying to create. The next thing that I'll talk about is some interactivity that I've built in. Any actor that has a blueprint called interactable or grabbable will provide information that can be read by the player character and will raise a widget. Now, these two yellow cubes are the same yellow cubes, but if we look here on the right, we can see that we have this one item, or this one variable called item data table row name. And each of these data table rows has information that the game reports. It has a name, whether or not you hold it, a description, how much it's worth, whether or not it's a note, and if it is indeed a note, the text of the note, and also what fonts to use on the note, which is something that I'm very proud of. So, even though these two objects are the same mesh, and they both derive from this interactable, grabbable, this one, called a crate, will behave differently from this one, which is called Goyunibo Inkisi, which is just my placeholder name for special items, magic items. And so we see they behave differently. Crates, you can drop and throw, and whatever this is, it takes it into your inventory, and you get a little widget pop-up that lets you know that you got stuff. Here are some more. These are money. And this one's just a crate. Up here where the player starts, I have a few placeholder notes. Now, because all of these are physics objects, these behave a little bit goofily, and I do not know exactly how to deal with that. So if you know anything about this, please let me know. But when you pick it up, it's related to a note, and it has a note that's pertinent to the story. Different notes have different texts. Some are more legible than the others. But I'm really proud of this. I think that this is cute. Let's see, I've already talked about doors. Some other interactable things are windows, which you can climb through. And a child of that window is a vent, which of course you can sneak through, and that kind of offers, different video gamey behaviors and opportunities. Here's an elevator that it looks like I do not have the key for. I'm pressing the F button and nothing's happening. But it looks like I put a crate down and told it that it's the key. I did not make this elevator. This elevator came from another project. But anyways, oh yes, one last thing to talk about. Swords. Like I mentioned, your swords, when you're swinging, it will return whatever you hit and kind of have different behaviors based on the physical material. It reports a sound. You can block. You can put your sword away, and you can attack. And it's not a very sophisticated system. But anyways, this is the player character, sneaking, fighting, interacting. These are the core features that I have built and more often spliced into the system. And I think that is where I will start with this devlog. Once again, this project is called, or codenamed rather, CHEVALIER, And in the coming weeks and months, as I make more progress on it, I'm going to be telling you about some of the other systems that I build. Maybe a little bit about the story and different kind of, situations that occur naturally. So I hope that you got a kick out of this, and I hope that you, I don't know, make it your business to see what else happens. Have a great night.